Welcome to episode 37 of Wednesday Night Live. And tonight we're going to be talking about Japanese food that can heal you. 7 things from a Japanese cuisine that is good for your health. And we're going to go through that tonight. As many of you know, I've spent a lot of time actually in Japan because of Miracle Noodles. Many of you know me because I'm the founder of Miracle Noodle. And of course, that is going to be one of the foods, of course. And while I was there, I went many, many times. I have been there, more than a dozen times. And as I went, each time I went, there was always foods, especially, that I'm interested in health. There were always foods that I saw that I thought, my God, unbelievable. And I learned a lot about these foods while I was there and started incorporating them into my own diet and recommending them to patients. And I really had the unique opportunity because of Miracle Noodle to be able to visit factories of various food manufacturers that make some of these foods. That was very exciting to me. And I'll touch on that tonight because it showed a sort of a different side of these foods. And it allowed me to get a sense of how they're used in Japan, not just for culinary purposes, but for health as well. And many of you know that the Japanese actually are among the longest living populations, on Earth. And part of that obviously has to do with their diet. And some of it probably has to do with a lot of the 7 things that we're discussing today. So let me share my screen and we'll get started. Okay, one second. All right. So you should see my screen. If you don't, let me know. And let me blow up the screen a little bit. And move things around. As always, if you have any sort of questions, do let me know in the chat box, and we'll get started. Just a second. Okay, there we go. All right, well, the first one is, of course, going to be Miracle Noodles. Now, for people who are on this who aren't familiar with Miracle Noodles, Shiitake noodles, the word Shiitake means white waterfall. And the reason that this is such a great product and food is because it's 97% water and 3% plant fiber, which basically means that it can be the perfect substitute for high starch, high glycemic foods. And we make them. If again, you may not know, but I am the owner and founder of Miracle Noodle. We've made them into all kinds of different shapes and flavors. Now in Japan, the most common use is in a block, actually, called Konyaku. And Konyaku is used and marinated and sliced, and it's used for a whole host of things. But in Japan, it's used in several things. So one of the main uses of the Konyaku in slices is to put it actually into a hot pot, into like a stew. That sometimes you can actually see. It's called oden, and you can see it in the 7-Elevens, believe it or not, in the winter time in Japan. And you go into a 7-Eleven, and they'll actually have like a crock pot that is like a slow cooker that is cooking sort of this meat and vegetable stew that has blocks of Konyaku in it. Additionally, it's also used as a noodle, and the noodle is usually marinated in different things. And if you're at a hotel for breakfast, you would often see like a little bit of noodles marinated in like a soy fish sort of broth. One of the most amazing things about it is that it's loaded with prebiotic fiber. The fiber is a fiber called glucomannan. Now, all of you who have been on my episodes know that we've spoken a lot about prebiotic fibers. Prebiotic fibers are basically those fibers that supply fuel or food to the beneficial bacteria in your gut. So they enhance the beneficial bacteria in the gut because they are a type of food. And once the food is digested, it often yields something called a postbiotic, which is basically a chemical that's created after the digestion of the fiber, after it's broken down. And oftentimes that can actually feed the intestinal lining of the gut. So it's really good for intestinal health. Now, the conditions that it's been studied for, it's been studied, the fiber, basically the standard dose that's been studied in medical studies is 2 grams. And you get that with 1 serving of Miracle Noodles. And it's been studied to help with high cholesterol, with diabetes, with obesity. And the reason partly is because really high fiber foods generally reduce calories. When you're eating this fiber, it's basically going to slow the absorption of the sugar or the starches that are in the food, other food that you're eating. And therefore it's going to help diabetes. And of course, it's going to help obesity because it's a filling food that's providing this beneficial fiber, but it's taking up space. And so therefore you're going to be able to feel satisfied without having the amount of calories that you would normally get, therefore reducing the calories, improving gut health, improving blood sugar control. And that's always going to help obesity because, as I've said many times, when your blood sugar is going up and down, you really don't have a whole lot of control over your urges, the sensations of hunger, abnormal sensations of hunger that you get. And therefore, that's an additional thing that's going to potentially help with diabetes. All right, so let's move on to number 2. And again, if anyone has any questions, let me know. Okay, the next is miso. So miso is a fermented product. So we know right off the bat that almost all fermented foods are basically going to be beneficial for your gut bacteria. And they're going to be beneficial just in general for your gut. The additional thing about fermented foods is that when foods get fermented, they break down things in the food that they're made from, which basically creates a different set of amino acids. It's sort of like the digestion effects. I'm getting something saying that you can't see my screen. So if that's so, do let me know. Let me try to share my screen again. Okay. Okay, having a little technical difficulties here. 1 second. All right, let's try this again. Okay, 1 moment. We'll get back to talking about miso. Okay, let me know if you can see my screen now. Having a little trouble with the software tonight. Apologize. Okay, good. Okay, 1 moment. There we go. Okay, just 1 second here. Sorry, we're having such technical difficulties here. Also getting a few things going on here. Sorry about this. Boy, all kinds of crazy stuff happening here. My DVD player is playing. Okay, all right, so we're back. All right, so as I was saying, because it's a fermented product, you are going to get also these amino acids that are formed because during the fermentation process, that's basically breaking down the food in a way that's going to make it a lot more digestible. Now, miso is basically a type of fermented soybean. And one of the fermentation process basically involves something called koji. Now, koji is a foundational ingredient in Japanese food. And what it is it's a type of fungus, believe it or not. There's all kinds of different kinds of fermentation. There's fungal fermentation, there's bacterial fermentation. Obviously, we're familiar with bacterial fermentation. That's things like sauerkraut, and um, and fungal fermentation is also found in other types of cultures. And this is a fungal fermentation, miso. It's fermented. It's fungus on rice, which breaks down the starch in the rice. And then with miso, and also with other types of products that we'll get into later, even the environment, there are other microorganisms, mostly bacterial, that also are part of the process. So you get this sort of started with this koji, which again is a fungus called aspergillus, actually, and that then breaks down, and then there's also the starch into a sugar, and then you get other microorganisms, sometimes from the environment, that then create further fermentation. We'll go through that a little bit more later. Just getting back to fungal fermentation, there are other cultures, as I said, that use fungal fermentation, like camembert cheese and blue cheese. This is another type of fungal fermentation. So what are the health benefits? Well, it's been known for a long time that it can help with radiation. This was done based upon survivors of the atomic bombs in Japan. And in fact, one of the amazing opportunities I had, I visited multiple miso factories in Japan. I visited one that was a gargantuan, huge miso company, and I got to see what looked like, it's a basically robotic miso fermentation facility. And there was one guy in this humongous factory, and you walked in and he was just basically like reading the newspaper, and there were these massive vats, fermentation vats. And when the fermentation in one was ready to go, and these are like megaton fermentation vats, and when a certain degree of fermentation was done, then this big robotic arm would come, pick it up, and move it to a different section. Meanwhile, there's one guy reading a newspaper in the front. Additionally, I was really fortunate to actually visit a factory outside the city of Hiroshima, and they told me about all the studies that were done against radiation. Of course, there's no radiation in that area anymore, but the original studies were done. And in fact, during Chernobyl, there were studies done giving rats miso, and it also helped with the radiation. That was sort of a test case, but essentially it helps protect against radiation, and it's a fermented food. So as I said, you're going to get a unique set of amino acids, and it's going to be able to create a whole set of new flavors for you. So the first thing I usually get when I recommend that people actually try to incorporate miso into their diet is because it has a lot of salt. But nowadays you can get low sodium versions of miso. And in fact, just so you know, that factory that I visited, it was a small factory, and we sell their product actually on our website. It's called Japan Gold, and we have a whole set of miso paste that you can actually marinate foods with, or just to add different flavors to your food. And what's amazing is, like I said, it's in addition to the fact that you have this fungus that is growing on the rice, which is then breaking down the starch, which is yielding some sugars, and then there are other microorganisms. And quite frankly, what's amazing about some of these older independent miso manufacturers, as well as other types of products, which we'll get into in just a moment, just the natural environment from the wood, the old wood, and there are all these microorganisms that exist in the environment that contribute uniquely to the flavor and to the uniqueness of all these different misos that you can find throughout Japan. But the one factory that I was, as I said, fortunate enough they were just really just incredible people, a young couple. And but the small factory had been around for a very, very long time, very, very old wood. It was a very unique opportunity for me to see up close. There is low sodium, but they actually have studies in Japan to show that there was a reduced risk of high blood pressure with people who actually consumed the miso. So 2 cups of miso per day actually was correlated with a lower rate of high blood pressure in the Japanese. Now, you cannot translate that to America. So I'm not recommending that you have 2 tablespoons to reduce your risk, or 2 cups of miso soup to reduce the risk of high blood pressure, because the Japanese eat an enormous amount of salt in their diet because of soy sauce, as an example, and miso and a bunch of other things. They do have a high degree of salt in their diet and do have a problem with high blood pressure and stroke because of that. But you can get low sodium. It's going to create a new flavor for you to be able to incorporate into your diet. Highly recommend it. And it's a unique fermented food that you can easily add to your diet. And honestly, if I could just get you to incorporate 1 or 2 of the things that I recommended tonight, that would be amazing. And the reason it's amazing is because I've said many times in previous episodes that we don't eat enough variety of food. That if you look back in history, cultures that just historically speaking, ate an enormous number of plant types of foods. And nowadays, we pretty much eat just 1 or 2 families of vegetables per day. And anytime you can incorporate and diversify your diet, you're going to be exposed to different nutrients in different concentrations. That's going to add, an incredible health benefit to your diet. So that's really what this is all about. All right, so number 3 is Japanese mushrooms. I've spoken a lot about mushrooms in the past. There are many, many Japanese mushrooms, actually, many of them. I'm just focusing on enoki, shiitake, and maitake, but there's also matsutake, which occurs only in a certain time of year and is eaten as a very expensive delicacy in Japan. And there are many, many kinds, but I'm focusing on these 3 because you can get these 3 pretty easily. And I'm not going to mention things like reishi. Well, I just mentioned it, but again, it's more of a medicinal mushroom, and it's not something it's not an edible mushroom. So I'm not mentioning that. However, I've spoken about it before. Enoki mushrooms are known as anti-tumor, and one of the reasons that this one region in Japan where they grow the most has the lowest incidence of cancer in Japan, which makes it really one of the lowest regions of cancer in the world. And they believe it's because most of the people in this area are involved in the growing and eating of enoki mushrooms. Shiitake mushrooms provide this umami flavor, and this is going to come up again before the night ends. And umami is sort of another flavor sensation, and it's the savory sensation. And in one of the episodes where I talk about hunger, one of the things I mentioned, and I'll include a link in the summary of one of the episodes I spoke about umami, that it's important to add this to your diet because it provides a sense of satiety and satisfaction to the flavor of a food. Now, there's artificial ways of getting umami, that's MSG, but there are also natural foods that have umami in them. Obviously, I'm not recommending anyone use MSG, but there are natural ways of getting that savory, kind of that sensation that where your mouth waters. And I believe that incorporating umami into your diet in some way is going to make the diet by itself just a whole lot more satisfying from a flavor perspective, and it's just going to be more satisfying. So shiitake mushrooms have a natural umami flavor. You always want to eat them cooked. They're not edible. They're not, generally speaking, you want to cook mushrooms because they have a compound in them that make them a little bit toxic if you eat them raw. And that's pretty much with all mushrooms. And there are several compounds that are found pretty much also in all mushrooms. One of them is beta-glucans. Beta-glucans are the compound that stimulates your immune system. And it's one of the reasons why, especially during this time where we're all worried about our immune system that it's important to have a serving of mushrooms a couple times a week, ideally once a day, if you ask me. Mushrooms are very low in calories, very filling because they're high in fiber, and they also have things like vitamin D that you don't get from your diet all that much. In addition to stimulating your immune system, these two chemicals here are very good at lowering your cholesterol, so they're going to be good for your heart health. And it really is just again a way of. There's so many ways of adding shiitake mushrooms. I like to grill them. So I also like to bake them. You can actually take them, marinate them with a little bit of olive oil and some salt, a little bit of salt, and you can just bake them in a dish for 30, 40 minutes. Or I sometimes just put them under the broiler for 6 or 7 minutes. And you get sort of like a grilled mushroom as well. I mean, my mouth is watering just thinking about it. And you can buy dried shiitake mushrooms. They're very inexpensive. You just soak them for around 40 minutes, take the stems off, and you're ready to go. And this can be incredibly filling. And I have to say that when you get to eat good mushrooms, they have a meaty consistency. And for a lot of people who used to eat a lot of meat and they start to incorporate and develop a taste for mushrooms, I've seen that their meat consumption tends to drop because they are just given another option. A lot of us, we're just so used to eating meat and animal products all the time that we can't think of well, what else can I eat? Well, mushrooms, believe it or not, can provide a really good source of a substitute, not necessarily for meat, but just to have something to fill. It definitely can be a meat substitute, especially now as we move to Maitake mushrooms. These are very meaty. It's a meaty vegetable. It's called the king of mushrooms. And Maitake, I believe in Japanese, means dancing mushroom, or maybe just dancing, because people would really get excited when they found Maitake mushroom. Now, these are obviously, shiitake and Maitake are not exclusive to Japan, but they are eaten widely there and prized. It's also known as hen of the woods, and as a supplement, by itself, it's a potent immune stimulator. It has something called what's listed as a diffraction, but all mushrooms are going to have that beta glucan that I spoke about, even in the button mushrooms that you buy at the store. Those are not as potent, but they're better than nothing. And you really do want to figure out a way to incorporate mushrooms into your diet in some way. Again, their nutrient density is going to be high because they're low in calories, they're filling, and they have a lot of nutrients. And the flavors and textures are going to be beneficial for you because, we also get sick and tired of the textures of the food that we're eating. And when you grill a shiitake mushroom, or you saute a maitake mushroom, which can be very, very meaty, this is going to provide an additional thing in your diet that is going to make it a lot easier for you to start eating healthier. I can't emphasize enough that you should be incorporating some kind of mushrooms, especially nowadays, because we all want our immune systems to be, in good shape. And especially as you're getting older and your immune system is declining, it's even more important. Naturally speaking, it's important for you to incorporate mushrooms into your diet because they're going to be helpful for your overall health. So enoki mushrooms are also widely available, maybe not as widely available as shiitake mushrooms. They don't sell these dry, I don't believe, probably not possible, but you can get them fresh at a lot of stores. And shiitake mushrooms, you could just go to Amazon and buy dried shiitake mushrooms, and they're going to be, very, very inexpensive. And maitake, you can also get dried. They are often fairly expensive. Whole Foods sometimes has fresh maitake mushrooms, which are not that bad, not terribly expensive. I would suggest that you just, check out what you might have in your local store and let me know. And if any of you have had enoki, shiitake, or maitake and have any comments, please do put them into the chat box. All right, so that's number 3. Now let's move on to number 4. Now I might add, probably because I won't get to it, but remember when I mentioned Koji is also the way they make sake, Japanese sake. And Japanese sake is basically made a similar way. They take koji, the rice, and which is the fungus on the rice, and then they mix it with regular rice, and that breaks down the starch into sugar. And then they have a yeast that basically breaks the sugar into alcohol. And it's an interesting process. And in fact, I've also had the amazing privilege to visit several breweries. I guess they're called kura. It's called kura in Japanese. And actually, I took classes in sake, and I'm a first level sake sommelier. Actually, I spent some time studying sake because I felt if I was going to go to Japan, I might as well learn a little bit and experience sake. Believe it or not, Japanese sake in Japan is not growing. It's actually decreasing in consumption. Whiskey consumption is actually increasing more than, and sake consumption is decreasing. The Japanese are making incredible world award-winning whiskeys these days, and the young people are either drinking beer or whiskey, and sake is declining. But in the U.S. and the West, sake consumption is increasing. Anyway, okay, so next is seaweed. So I spoke a little bit about seaweed, I believe it was last week. I spoke about kombu. Now, kombu is a thick sea vegetable, and it is used to make broth. There's a broth called dashi, and we'll talk about that in just a moment. But last week, we spoke about the high iodine count of kombu. And one of the reasons I think it's nice to be able to incorporate some form of seaweed into your diet. I'm not recommending, the reason I'm recommending some kind of seaweed is because you can get this high iodine count. Also, when you add seaweed is also an umami flavor. Now, kombu, it makes a broth called dashi. And dashi is basically kombu plus shredded flakes of like a type of a tuna called a bonita. And mixed together, this creates this amazing umami broth that I could probably drink it all day. And it's going to get you umami flavor, which is going to be, again, very satisfying. It's going to make your diet and you're going to enjoy your food a lot better. And one strip of kombu has a lot of iodine content. So you'll be able to get that iodine, which a lot of us are not getting enough of. I recommend these are all things that I just recommend that you experiment with. And there's a brand called Kayanoya that you can buy on Amazon. And I came across this brand in Japan, actually. And I think it's just incredibly delicious. It makes it very, very easy. They have sort of almost like tea. These you can just sort of put it in water, very high quality. And in fact, I had this amazing conversation with them at a department store in Japan. And I was just sort of blown away. They had this really high-end looking display, and I was talking to them, and there was someone there that spoke good, really good English. And sorry, I see I have a question coming up, but I can't pull it up. Let me see here, one moment. If the person who's asking a question, if you could put it in the chat box, that would allow me to see it. I'm having trouble tonight with tech. So if you could put the question into the Q&A. So I saw the Kayanoya brand, was very impressed by it. And I thought I would have to get it shipped from Japan if I wanted to have it. And then at a show, one of the food shows, I saw they were displaying, and I was so excited. They didn't understand. They came over and they didn't understand why I was so excited. They were like, they probably thought I was crazy. But okay, I'll answer your question a little bit later. So I recommend Kayanoya. You can actually get it on Amazon, remarkably. So you can get anything on Amazon. And I just recommend it because you want to be able to add umami flavors in a natural way. Now, the reason that kombu is has umami is because it actually has natural glutamate, and not monosodium glutamate, but just natural glutamate, which is not going to be harmful to you. And it's just an incredibly delicious flavor to be able to have. You can marinate things, vegetables in it. It's again, it's making me water just thinking about it. Nor is a good snack. You can buy it anywhere now, and it's just those sheets of seaweed, and you're not going to get as much iodine, but it's good to get a little bit of iodine because, again, we spoke about last week how a lot of people are not getting enough iodine in your diet. And again, anyone who's taking a multivitamin, you want to make sure it's got at least 150 milligrams of iodine in it. Okay, next is green tea. Green tea is a wonder drink by any measure of that word. And there are about 20 types, and I'm obviously not going to go through all 20 types, but I would like to highlight a few that are relatively unknown, but that I enjoy greatly, and something that maybe you might want to try yourself. So here are my favorites that aren't well known. Kokicha is one, and this is made from the stems and the stalks of the tea, and it's very light and has a very light and clean taste. Gyokura, believe it or not, has a little bit of an umami flavor, and is very high in theanine. And theanine is found in a lot of green teas. It's something that boosts your mood. It boosts your mood. It boosts your focus, and gives you a little pep. But it's not caffeine. The teas that have a lot of theanine in them, and in fact, people are taking theanine as a supplement. It's also being added to what's called nootropics. Nootropics are supplements that are supposed to boost your focus, and they're like brain enhancing. A lot of people are taking L-theanine just by itself for that purpose. Teas that have high theanine are often also high in caffeine. So Gyokura also is very, very high in caffeine. So for people who are sensitive to caffeine, unfortunately I am, so I don't drink this all that much. But I would recommend trying it because it's probably hard for you to imagine how a tea could have a savory like flavor. And so I recommend it. It's definitely going to be good for you. And then Hojicha, which is roasted green tea. It's brown, and you want to get Japanese green tea, and the reason you want to get it is because it'll be green. This one's not green, but all the other types are various shades of green. If you buy like Lipton green tea or other types of green tea, it comes out brown. That's not really green tea. And the fact is that all teas are the same plant across the world. It's the same genus of plant. So, but the way, depending on the shade and when it's harvested, if it's roasted, all these sorts of things are going to make differences in the type of tea, whether it's made from stems. Again, so Hojicha is roasted. It has a nutty roasted flavor. It's very good. It's very low in caffeine, and it's good as an iced tea. But you're still going to get the ECGC that's in the green tea. Now the EGCG, sorry, is the main chemical, and there are obviously other polyphenols. This is a catechin. That's what it's called, and it's incredibly beneficial for your health, not just as an antioxidant, but believe it or not, it actually facilitates zinc getting into your cells. Now, I've spoken quite a bit over the last, several months about zinc, only because I feel it's so important that everyone gets zinc for their immune system with the situation we're dealing with. I have probably mentioned every single week that everyone listening should be taking somewhere between 15 and 25 milligrams of zinc per day. Now, quercetin, which is from vegetables, is another antioxidant, but EGCG basically pushes zinc and quercetin into and quercetin also helps zinc get into the cell. So when you're having green tea and you're getting zinc from your food or from your supplement, it's going to get where it's supposed to get if you are having some green tea. I would not recommend that you get a green tea supplement. They actually had some problems with them many years ago, and therefore it's not something that I recommend. So you want to just, again, we're so lucky that we have access to all these different types of foods in the United States. You can buy all these types of teas that I just spoke about here in the US. And there are plenty of companies that sell them. And it's just something for you to, again, broaden your horizons when it comes to food and drink, and help your health in a great way. So I highly recommend you try these. Obviously, the most common ones like sencha, is, if you haven't ever had green tea, like real green tea, I would actually suggest you try sencha, or obviously matcha, which is the ground up leaf of and then you're getting the whole plant. But if you've never had green tea, like true Japanese green tea, I would recommend you start with sencha. And then I would probably go to gyokura just to try it. You may or may not like it because of that flavor. And definitely for everyone, it's great as a iced tea as well. Really, really important. And you could spend a whole hour talking about EG/CG, but I focused here on the zinc because zinc is so important, and it really helps the zinc get where it's supposed to be, into the immune cells, or just into the cells that need it. All right, great. So let's now move on to number 6. Black and brown rice vinegar. So I am a big fan of trying different vinegars, especially for your salads. And the reason I do that, I recommend that, is because vinegar has a whole host of health benefits, just vinegar in general. One of the most amazing things about vinegar is that when you have it before a meal, it actually lowers the glycemic index of the food, which basically means that you're not going to get the same blood sugar rise that you would get with foods that make your blood sugar go up if you have vinegar before it or with that food. And I'm not really sure the mechanism of why that is, but that has been shown to happen. And when you can add some sort of different flavor to your salads, and we'll talk about why vinegar is not just for salad in a moment, but when you can do that, it really makes your salads more exciting, and it's just going to be better for you because you're going to be getting different types of breakdown products, because this is, again, another fermented product. The rice vinegar is similar, made very, very similar to sake that I was explaining, where they take the koji and they add it, in this case, to brown rice. Sake is made with white rice. It's actually been polished because the brown has a lot of amino acids and things in it that would make the sake taste very, very bad. But when you're making vinegar, it's a benefit. The flavor that it gives is a benefit, and essentially, it's fermented to make alcohol. Just so you're getting like a sake, which is then basically mixed with vinegar and sort of fermented until it stops fermenting, and then mixed. So that's how you're sort of getting the vinegar. So this koji is showing up all throughout Japanese food. And I was, again, in one of my other adventures in Japan, I was introduced to one of the main koji companies. And what's amazing about Japan, you would think that koji, being the foundational ingredient for sake and for brown rice vinegar and soy sauce, as well as miso, all these things are so foundational to Japan. You think there'd be 100 companies, but there are only like 4 or 5. And I had the amazing opportunity to tour a koji factory in Japan. And that was really amazing because they showed how they made it, and they have the koji. It's these spores, and what they do is they heat the rice up, and so the rice is cooking, and they have this shaker, and it looks like smoke almost, the spores, and they just sprinkle it on the rice, and then the rice starts to ferment and form koji, which is the fungus living on the rice, and then that is basically sold to miso makers and soy sauce factories, and sake breweries, and the whole host. And it was really just an incredibly fascinating thing to learn about the various strains of aspergillus and the fungus that they use and all the experiments that they're doing, and really had a great time. So what are the health benefits? Amazingly, it can help prevent lipid peroxidation, which basically means that if you're overcooking oils then you're damaging the oils, or you're getting exposed to oils that are going to oxidize, it can actually prevent that. And when you get lipid peroxidation, that's very dangerous and inflammatory to the body. So that's an incredible benefit. It's also, along with everything else that we've spoken about, the amazing miracle of fermented foods. Well, you're getting this unique set of amino acids. And some people think that it can help with lactic acid buildup, which basically is going to cause fatigue as you get older. Fatigue, of course, if you're exercising a lot, and therefore can help with that. But overall, in addition to getting these incredible unique set of amino acids that's going to improve your health, and again add to the beneficial part of improving your gut health because it's a fermented product, the flavor benefits are huge, and it can be used as in your salads, and you even just plain rice vinegar, which is a lot milder, is a fabulous thing to use to make different salad dressings. Like, for example, lately I've been taking just plain rice vinegar and mixing it with either a product called Joy, which is just stands for just one ingredient, which is a very creamy cashew and almond. And you can mix the rice vinegar, plain rice vinegar, but you can use the brown rice vinegar too, with the cashew, and you can make this incredible creamy sauce, creamy dressing that is going to rival, if you season it right, any sort of what would be a very unhealthy, bottled creamy dressing. Those are just absolute poison, most of those bottled dressings. And you can get this, again, my mouth is watering just thinking about it. You're getting this incredible creamy thing that you can, and the black and brown rice vinegar is going to just be a different additional thing that you can have. Additionally, you can dilute it and use it as a drink, add a tiny bit of honey. And sipping vinegars are very popular in Japan and actually in other countries in Asia, and they are refreshing. Of course, we all know that people have taken up the habit of having some apple cider vinegar with a little bit of honey as a drink in the morning, diluted, and that, of course, has health benefits. Vinegar is one of those ingredients that all of us have readily available that we don't use to its fullest effect. And black and brown rice vinegar, both have different flavors, and you can Google that, and you can get them on Amazon. Amazingly, all this stuff is available. You go back 10, 15 years, you'd have to seek out a Japanese store or an Asian market, and now you can just go to Amazon. Brown rice vinegar, you can get it at Whole Foods as well. And I would also just say, just getting into there are food vinegars, other food vinegars as well, not from Japan, but in the US, like fig vinegar and black currant vinegar, all kinds of different things that are going to add a lot of flavor. So, okay, let's move on to number 7. And if many of you probably know what number 7 is, It's natto. I've spoken about natto many, many times, and it's it's fermented soybeans, and believe it or not, also is uses koji. That is another thing that we've spoken about, and it is a wonder. It's a miracle, really. Now it's got this vitamin K2, and what does vitamin K2 do is that it tells calcium where to go and where not to go. And why that's so important is because you don't want your calcium in your blood vessels. That's going to increase your risk for heart disease. You want calcium in your bones. And just yesterday, there was a blockbuster study that came out that showed that vegans have something like 20% more fractures than people who are not vegan. And the first thing that came to mind with that is two things: vitamin D and vitamin K2. Vegans are very low in K2, very, very low, because it's mostly found in animal products, except for natto. And natto has more K2 than any food on earth by several orders of magnitude. Therefore, if you're getting the calcium where it needs to go, then you're going to have stronger bones. And one of probably the reasons why that study showed that vegans have more fractures is because most vegans are getting hardly any K2. They're getting K1. K1 is vitamin K that's found in all leafy greens, but you need K2 to tell the calcium where to go. Most vegan supplements are going to have K2, and you really do want to make sure that if you have a multivitamin, that it has K2 or something called menaquinone in there, because it's going to yield stronger bones. Health benefits: it's also high in zinc and manganese, very high in protein because it has soybeans, and it's fermented. It's also probiotic without salt. Most probiotic foods have salt in them. So and some people are just avoiding salt. Now, I told you can get low sodium miso, and that's also going to be beneficial for you. But I would recommend trying natto. Now, unfortunately, a lot of people don't like natto because it has a bit of an unusual smell, and it's somewhat slimy when you take it out of the jar. But the taste I think is good. It's nutty, and I eat it often. I get it from this company here, and I highly recommend. I've met the owners, and I have to tell you again another story about Japan before we end tonight. But I've been fascinated with natto for a while because you can't not be if you're interested in health. It is a superfood to the 10th power because in addition to all these benefits, it's a probiotic. So it's going to be beneficial for your gut. It's also what's called a spore probiotic, which means that it's very stable. And while it's hard to say if you have just small little thing of yogurt or sauerkraut that hasn't been fermented for very long because it's commercially, commercial fermented foods are not fermented for that long because they want to make it and get it out to the store. So are you really getting the bacteria where you need it? Well, there's still additional benefit, even if it doesn't get there because of those amino acids that I spoke about. But a spore probiotic, which is what natto is very durable and is going to get where it's supposed to get. So natto, I've been fascinated by it for a long time, and so much so that on one of my trips to Japan, I actually flew to a region where they make natto and was able to tour a bunch of factories that make natto because I wanted to introduce it to the United States in some fashion. And I had some ideas about that. And I spent an amazing day with several owners of natto companies in an area called Ibaraki. And they even had a natto museum with a natto mascot. Actually, I should have put pictures into my talk tonight because I have pictures that I treasure from all these incredible trips that I took. Unfortunately, I was never able to figure out how to get it here. It would need to be frozen, and there were very few factories that were making it. enter Anne, who I happen to have. I forget how I met her originally. I think I came across an article and they show that they're making it in New York, in Brooklyn. And I reached out to her and struck up a friendship with her. I've met her many times, and they make it in Brooklyn. They have organic, they have turmeric, they have, and it's in jars, and it's a fermented food. They can send it to you in the mail. And I can't emphasize enough. Look, a small percentage of people, not, I shouldn't say that. I think you should just try it because it's so incredibly beneficial for you. And I would recommend this company. Again, the owners are incredible people, and I highly recommend that you give it a try. It is an incredible food, and as many of you, if you've been on my other talks, I showed you my own levels of micronutrients, and my K2 was fabulous, and it's not because of the supplement I'm taking. It's because I eat natto on a regular basis, and I just feel like it's really hard to avoid thinking about because it's so powerful. So I think I'll stop there. I could speak about it for quite a while. And unfortunately, I don't speak Japanese. Getting that question. That would be nice. I did study it for a little while, but it's very, very difficult. So one of the questions is about whether Miracle Noodle was considering combining miso with Miracle Noodles. We actually did have one in the past. We're not selling that currently. Miracle Noodles infused with shiitake. Unfortunately, that wouldn't work that well. You can't really get the concentration of the shiitake high enough to be significant. However, we will be coming out with a savory type of soup that will likely have shiitake mushrooms in it. So stay tuned. Stay tuned for that. So I hope you enjoyed tonight's class. Just to review, we have Miracle Noodles, of course, miso, Japanese mushrooms, seaweed, and really, if you could try, just research a little bit about dashi, that would be incredibly beneficial. Green tea, definitely try a new green tea. Hopefully I expose you to a few more. I'm telling you, incorporating different vinegars is really going to be beneficial for you. And natto. I hope you weren't bored by all my stories and trips to Japan. Trisha is asking how I eat the natto. In Japan, they eat it on top of rice, and they put egg on top, usually like a soft-boiled egg on top, and they sort of mix it up and eat it. I just take a spoon of it and I put just a drop of soy sauce on it, and that's how I eat it. In times past, I've eaten it with a little bit of, I know it's crazy, but a little bit of Tabasco, which would be highly unusual for. But if you go to the website here, nyrture.com, they have some really interesting Western style uses of how to incorporate natto into your diet in a Western way, not the Japanese way. And I would highly recommend that. They also have other ways. They have chocolate that has, that obviously is going to taste like chocolate, but has natto in it. And they have dried natto that also still preserves some of the probiotic benefits as well. So I remember on one of their Instagram posts, they made a bean dip with it. So again, it's really high in protein as well, which is nice. But I am unusual in the sense that I can just eat it by the spoonful. Maybe because I just know how beneficial it is, and I have developed a taste for it. But definitely check out this website. They're such great people, and it's always great to support really artisans that are making this in the United States. They make it in Brooklyn and are committed to getting this out there. And I just have to say that, we're getting near the end of the hour, but all of you know that Miracle Noodle was founded because I was really amazed at the potential health benefits and wanted to get that out there. And in the health food space, honestly, a lot of people are in it because obviously they want to create a business that contributes to society, but also that they are interested in the health benefits of getting this out there. And again, I took that trip because I thought it would be such a great thing. And Anne is doing that over at their company. So it's so great to support companies like that. And so I recommend that. All right. Well, I wish everyone an incredible Thanksgiving. I hope everyone stays safe, takes their zinc and their vitamin D, and now they know to have have 1 cup or more of green tea. But one thing I didn't mention is that the epidemiological studies show improved cholesterol, insulin sensitivity, weight loss, reduced death rate for people who drink a lot of green tea. But as we spoke about, you really want to get it in there to help with your zinc these days. These are other reasons, but in these days, that's what we're looking at. So thank you everyone for, again, I wish everyone a wonderful, loving Thanksgiving with your families, and look forward to seeing you next week, where I'll be speaking about how to design a diet that optimizes your hormonal levels. And we'll talk about that in depth next week. And again, much love to everyone and their families. And I look forward to seeing you again next week. Thank you so much.